Welcome, everyone, back to week 2 of It's the Wedding Industry. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Welcome back. This is week 2 of our lovely podcast where we chat about something in the industry that either bugs us or we see that things could be doing, or other videographers could be doing a little bit better, or things that we've just kind of noticed that we're like, why are people doing things this way? And just kind of offering a loving, kind of tongue-in-cheek way of maybe either a better way to do things, another way to think about things, and our take on it. Hot, maybe, sort of. That's
Hot Take Tuesday today.
Hot Take Tuesday today. So this is the week for Andrew to pick the topic. I picked the topic last week of shooting in 24 versus shooting in 60. So if you haven't listened to it, you should definitely listen to it. But Andrew, what's the topic of the week this week?
The knee-jerk response and topic that we're going to talk about this week is the misuse of drones.
Ooh, a good one.
Now, again, even this title is a subjective title. I mean, how do I define misuse? And so, again, subjective. This is my opinion. This is something when I see it, I'm like, why are you doing this? What's your reason behind this? It's kind of dangerous. It's got to be loud and distracting, blah, blah, blah. But as we'll get into later, we don't have the full context and information to these situations. We just see what we see on Instagram, and I have no idea what happened leading up to this moment. I don't know if this was staged. There's just a lot we don't know, for the good and for the bad. And so who are we to say this is wrong? So I think that's where we will kind of shift and pivot in a few minutes to, okay, we've gotten past Andrew and Michael having their hissy fit over this misuse of drones thing, and then get more into that. Here's why we think it's kind of an issue, and then what we think is maybe a better alternative to the misuse and ways that people are using the drone. So let's get into the nitpicky, here's my issue and what I would consider a misuse of the drone, and that will specifically be during the ceremony. Something that I see happening a lot lately is this looking straight down over the aisle shot during the ceremony. Now, can it look cool or engaging, pretty? Yes, I think it can. Do I think it's the safest thing? No. Early on in my career, I loved doing, and still to this day, love doing the bird's eye view, the over top of the couple. And even then, when I used to do those shots, I'd have so many videographers on the forums, on Facebook groups, be like, oh my gosh, that's so dangerous, that's irresponsible, that's illegal. I think you and I could agree and say that if something were to happen, if the drone were to fall out of the sky being 40 feet above the couple, I mean, time is limited. You don't have much time to like get them out of the way and get in there and like grab it, or, get them out of the way. So that's already like a potential issue. But like when it's you and the couple, I feel like there's just a lot more ability to control the situation and the environment. Let's skip, though, back a couple hours while we're not at sunset, and it's not just you and the couple. We're at the ceremony where you're probably, even if you have a second, you're either at the back, somewhere toward the back, or somewhere toward the front. And you have your own cameras, multiple other cameras going at this point in time. The last thing you want is for your drone to just fall out of the sky, or to go crazy, or to distract you to where like, oh my gosh, like I'm not getting the shot I want, and you miss something you actually need to get with one of your main cameras, your ground cameras. And so if safety isn't already an issue, I think the sound barrier is a distracting element to this, that oftentimes people are just far too close to what's going on. They're far too close to the action. And as you and I have talked about, we've had conversations with planners, and we're like, hey, I noticed like this happened at a wedding you were planning. Like, was it super loud, or like, was it not very loud at all? And they're like, oh my gosh, it was so distracting. It was super loud. And we were like, is this actually happening? They're going for it. And they don't look to be bothered, or in like they didn't look like they were sweating it. They're just doing their thing. Yeah. Almost like completely out of touch with what was happening in that moment. And it can just be super distracting. And the last thing I think we want to do as a videographer and as someone serving our couples is to take them and or their parents or their family or their guests out of the moment. You don't want people's attention taken away from that, because they're like, what's that? What's that noise? What's the sound? And it's like, oh no, like that's the last thing I think we want to do. So I would also love to hear, I guess, some of your quick thoughts on what you think on this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I know you and I both do when it comes to getting things ready for, this type of shot is you ask yourself a couple of different questions as you kind of come into the wedding day. Number one, I always pop the drone up prior to just to kind of see what kind of options we have. So, for example, like this top-down shot over the ceremony, I think on my list of priorities of where this shot ranks of like the variety of different stuff I can get with a drone, this one is basically at the bottom of my list. I think there's a lot of different other kinds of shots that you can use to get the footage of the ceremony that you want, and have it not be directly overhead, very loud, very noisy. You have one perspective where, say, you're at an environment, you're right on the beach, you're right on the river, you're in the mountains somewhere, and you can back up a little bit and then see the environment, see all the different kinds of stuff. You can be further back. Nobody hears it. You have a better shot. I think that's kind of the big win there, instead of having, one static perspective where I think like what we were talking about is that you can only go up or you can come down closer to the couple, and that's about it. Versus if you try something else out, you can have a little more creativity, a little more variety. And I think you got to ask yourself, how is this shot contributing to the story? It's one thing to look through on Instagram, and in this culture of reels and TikToks and short videos and stuff, I feel like a lot of people see these things and they have this wow factor, this shock factor of whoa, drone, cool, pretty, I want that.
I got to try that.
I got to do that. Are you going to do that for my wedding? And it's I feel like us as the experts in, video, it's up to us to educate our couples and say, yes, I think this is an amazing shot. I think it can add things, really, really add a lot to a wedding film and add things to a story. But you got to ask yourself, all right, how is this contributing to the story? How is this shot going to enhance what's here? And also, I think an important question is, do we have all of our other bases covered? Do we have our other ground cameras, our groom reaction camera, our bride coming down the aisle, our safety shot in the back? Do we have all of that stuff tucked away, ready to go, ready? And then I would say, then we can go fly the drone to get the cool shot. But I think it's important to say, this is kind of gravy on top, less of this is the crux of the ceremony and stuff. Those are kind of some of my off the cuff thoughts on the matter.
I guess some of our knee-jerk reaction is, oh, why are you doing this? This isn't smart. I don't think it's safe. Oh, it's super noisy. And it's funny because even those being what I would call nitpicks, I think those still have there's still valid points behind too much noise is not good. And safety should be safety above all, right? Safety first. I don't think there's a safety first motto in the wedding industry. There's nothing usually dangerous happening. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to have a drone and it's something that could injure someone, harm someone, or distract someone, I think we need to mitigate those potential hazards and distractions and say, how can I still use this and get something really cool and unique without making the odds go through the roof of something could happen harmful or distracting. I don't want anyone to be distracted. I don't want anyone to get harmed, but I still want a creative, unique shot. And like you said, I want something that adds to the story. You can only have a creative, ooh, wow, shot so many times, I think, from that perspective. And I think this is where it gets in more to the subjective and here's what I think might be better, and not just for the safety and sound aspect side of things, but for the creative themselves. They're going to have a more unique and totally different perspective if they are at the back of the ceremony looking up the aisle, or directly flip 180 looking down the aisle instead of up the aisle, or if they're anywhere on the sides. Because the further away you are, the more creative freedom and liberty you have to do parallax moving shots or push in shots or come from really high, push in, tilt up. You just can do so many more things when you're further back and you're just taking in the space and the grandeur of the location. Whereas you already have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other cameras that are probably pretty close, whether they're in tight or they're medium shots. The drone shot doesn't need to be this up close and personal detail shot. I think the drone serves more of a here's where we are, not who is what we're looking at. Who here is the focus and attention, or the center of attention at this point in time. I think all your other cameras clearly capture and show us who's the center of this moment. Your drone shot, I feel like, is more of an established, like, wow, this is a beautiful location and area. And I think you can get something different every single wedding when you're further back and looking at where we are versus your top-down shot. You might be in an insanely beautiful area and you have, one, no idea where you are because you're looking down at a bunch of people in chairs. And two, okay, even if you had a great floral setup your whole way down the aisle, what if you don't have that the next 10 weddings? At a certain point, it's like that shot will only look so good and so different before, every shot now looks the same every time you do it.
I think one of the things that when you have a drone, it's a great creative tool, more so than anything. It's kind of that gravy on top of like the wedding day. And it's something that it's a gravy on top. It makes it so that it's not going to take people out of the environment, out of the moment that's like happening. And it's something that can like offer that like unique perspective. And I think by only doing that one shot, it limits you to like the vast like creative opportunities like the drone can do for you. Because you think about it, the drone, it's a great way. It's a dolly shot. It's a Steadicam shot. It's a jib shot. It's a bunch of other different things. And so I feel like by using it to its fullest potential, I think you can make better films with more perspectives.
Yeah, agreed. Short and sweet, straight to the point. I think there's just so many more beautiful, creative things we can do with the drone than just looking straight down. Especially since, that's something we can definitely get later in the day. Like we've talked about, when you have just a couple, get that overhead bird's eye view shot later when you have the opportunity to do that. But when it's a ceremony and there's a ton of people and you're probably in a totally different spot earlier in the day for the ceremony, my goodness, like leverage that, get a really unique and creative shot during this moment. And at the same time, you'll be avoiding the sound and the safety issues. So I think that's a better alternative if you still want to go for those shots. I guess until your drone falls out of the air and hits somebody, go for it. Or until someone actually verbally says, hey, the sound was like super distracting, you ruined the moment. Until that happens and until you feel bad for it. Like, again, you only have to take what we're saying with a grain of salt. I just think what we are offering is a better alternative and solution to this, because it just takes those other two issues out of the equation and make sure that those two things never happen. They're not an issue. And I've had so many parents and planners and couples be like, one, they had no idea I even got the shot because they couldn't hear it. And if they couldn't hear it, that means it was nowhere close to being able to injure or hurt someone or fall out of the sky on somebody. And like, I've just had so many people be like, I didn't know you got the shot, one, and two, like, thank you for not being all up in our business and like potentially taking us out of the moment. So those are just some of our thoughts.
Yeah, I think a great question to kind of ask yourself as a videographer is like, is me doing this for me to get the shot, or is it to make a better film for the couple? And I think that's a question that it's always a tension, but I think it's a challenge to other people in the industry, is that it's this thought of, pretty shot or intentional shot. And I feel like a lot of times videographers, I can sometimes come into the day with this thought of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this shot, I'm going to get this shot, I'm going to get this shot. And this is about me and like what I'm thinking about in my portfolio and that kind of stuff. And it's like, I think we have to check ourselves and say like, hey, that's actually like not why we're here. Like we're here ultimately for the couple, for their day, and making it honestly a distraction-free environment for them. And granted, would that maybe come at the expense of a cool shot or potentially a drone shot that you're thinking of? Maybe so, but it's like, I'm happy to have that inconvenience if it means that the couple, as they're walking down the aisle, they can be fully present in that moment. They can be like looking down at their, I guess, soon-to-be husband and be like, wow, this is happening. I'm in it. This is good. And so, if we can play a role to contribute to that feeling and not that distraction filled environment, I think that's ultimately a big win all around.
Yep. And I've said this before. I think we've both said this before. sometimes we have to sacrifice our art for the sake of a moment. I might get a better, cooler, more creative shot, something that's going to make my peers go, oh, wow, that's insane. That's beautiful. But I ruined a moment. My friends and peers don't know that. Instagram doesn't know that. What people can see through a quick reel don't know that. But for the planner and the photographer and the couple, yeah, I kind of just like wrecked the moment because I wanted something that was super artistic. And it's like, if that's going to be the case, then it's like, then it's not worth it for me. If I'm going to have to step on people's toes and kind of mess with the work side of the working relationship side of things on the day of, or take a couple out of the moment, then like the art isn't worth it enough for me in that moment to get the shot that I think that I want.
Yeah, I think we have to ask ourselves the question of, are we creating content for Instagram or are we creating content for our couples? That rhymed sort of unintentionally, but it's a good question. And I think it's definitely something that always goes to the back of my head, at least like on a wedding day, is like, like what are we doing here? And just like having like, I think the emotional intelligence too, just like the factor of knowing the couple, seeing how they're interacting, judging their emotions, their feelings and stuff. And I think, that was a long-winded ramble to nowhere, yeah. But
well, I guess to wrap it up, we could say that we've talked about the things that bug or annoy us. We've talked about actual like concerns of like this could be an issue, like a legitimate issue, and we've talked about the more subjective, like here's where we think creatively this looks and works better the vast majority of the time, and it removes the issues we've talked about. Why not just kind of do that when you film and do that the majority of the time? But I think to kind of wrap things up with our little sarcastic touch, now that we've touched on the knee-jerk reaction things, the valid points, the subjectivity with art and creating, we need to wrap things up by saying that this is the wedding industry. It doesn't matter. Because your couple might have given you the green light and you're just going to do whatever the heck you got to do to get your shot. And who am I to say, who am I? Who is Michael to say, nah, you're wrong. If your couple said, I want this, I don't care about sound, and they're not thinking about the drone, even if you explain to them, here's what could go wrong, or even if you don't, and you're like, I'm just not going to mention it to them because I don't want to fight a bride who wants a shot. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do what she says. Mm-hmm. It ultimately doesn't matter. Like, it's not my business. It's not my couple. You want your couple to be happy. And there's kind of this weird fine line of you want your couple to be happy and to be served well. Just please don't injure somebody or ruin the experience for like everybody else in the process.
We don't want someone to be, you don't want to see an Instagram post somewhere, a videographer's drone falls from the sky during the wedding ceremony, and all of a sudden you're all over TikTok, you're all over the news, you're all over all these places.
The TikTok man's voice. Videographer flies drone. It's a couple doing ceremony.
And it gets shared, and that's what you're going to be known for. And it's just like, I just don't think it's worth it.
If you're not filming a
ceremony,
if you're not filming,
what Andrew's trying to say is, if you're not filming a ceremony from the top with a drone in 2023, you'll be
out of business by 2024.
That's the one. Yeah. Who are we to say? We could be gone in a year.
We're going to be out of business if this continues.
This is true. I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be hanging at the Cape. That has been week 2, episode 2 of the It's the Wedding Industry.
It's the Wedding
podcast.
Industry.
Thank you for joining along with us for this week. We hope to see you back next week, and who knows what the topic will be, because we honestly don't know.
Who knows? But it will be Michael's turn to pick a topic and put me on the spot, or put himself on the spot.
Who knows? We'll see you next time. See you next week.
See you next week.